Howdy folks, this is BelGeode, this is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this is a test, otherwise known as one of my chill vids. Okay, so this one has kind of been a long time coming, so to speak, only because the aircraft has been out for a little while now, and I've been flying it around and, trying to get used to it and so on and so forth. This is, of course, the DC Designs AV-8B Harrier, which also comes with the British GR variant as well. I think it's the GR9 if I'm not too mistaken. But this is the AV-8B2, and I want to say the NA should also be included, but don't quote me on that. We can always go back to the main menu in the aircraft selection to find out. But suffice to say, Harrier has always been one of my favorite military birds, aside from, of course, the F-14 Tomcat and even the FA-18 Hornet, which I understand DC Designs is going to be bringing out a free version of that at some point in time in the near future. But the Harrier is one of those weird birds that's always had a close place in my heart because of two reasons. Number one, just look at it. Look how weird it is. You got that Pegasus engine that allows you to go VTOL or VSTOL. And of course, the other thing is kind of a sentimental thing because my daughter and son-in-law are stationed down in North Carolina where these birds fly daily. He's attached to the squadron down there. I forget exactly which squadron is there at this particular time, but I'll probably have all of that pop up in a commentary below. But yeah, the Harrier. Now, of course, if you are not new to the channel and you've watched some of my DCS videos, no doubt you've already seen me fly the Harrier. I'm a huge fan of the DCS Harrier because of the fact that they put so much into it. Now, with that having been said, I'm going to try and keep the comparisons to that to a minimum because this is Microsoft Flight Simulator. Of course, we don't have weapons, even though if you do purchase this outside of the Microsoft Flight Simulator marketplace, you will of course have the option to add like GBUs and stuff like that off the pylons and whatnot. But they are non-functional. They're just there for looks. We know that. And of course the question comes up often, well, what's the point of having a fighter in Microsoft Flight Simulator? Listen, there doesn't have to be a point. If you like fighters and you like flying, why not? Why not? That's the point. It's a flight simulator. You fly it. If you want to blow stuff up, that's exactly what DCS is there for. But last time I checked, I can't exactly go to Hawaii in DCS. I can go to the Marianas, which is, I guess, kind of sort of close. Not distance-wise, but still, it's not quite the same thing. And, of course, that leads us to where we are. We are at, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correct, so don't crucify me, Kaneohe Bay, I believe it's called. The Marine Corps Air Station on the northern side of Oahu. So that's where we are today. I figured that was a perfect place to test this thing out because I also have, you may have seen in a previous video, the Vessels project where it's adding ships, static ships and moving ships that you can land on, particularly with helicopters. But of course, since we have the VTOL capability, we're going to try and see if we can do like a case one approach onto one of the moving ships, or maybe even one of the static ships. We'll try both. We'll see what we can do. All right, now, of course, this is DC Designs. If you are used to DC Designs work, let's just get this out of the way. This is not quote-unquote study level. It will never be quote-unquote study level. This is for the fun. If you look at DC Designs products from that standpoint, then you're going to enjoy it. If you're looking for parity between the Razbam version of the DCS Harrier, you're going to be sorely disappointed. So get those expectations out of the way. If you want to fly a Harrier that is a pretty decent model and fairly accurate as far as what you can do with it, this is your bird. But do not expect DCS quality. They've already stated time and time again their aim is not to bring any kind of in-depth to it. They want the broadest spectrum of users, and the broadest spectrum of users include those who just want to hop in a bird and fly, which is precisely what we're going to do after we check out the external camera views. Okay, so there's not really a lot to report here as far as external camera views. You've got your standard behind the bird view, which I like to use to check my controls. So we got the elevators, we got the ailerons there, we got the rudder, and we also have flaps, but bear in mind flaps are not going to be functional since we have the bird cold and dark. And we also have the nozzles. Now, an important thing regarding the nozzles that I see come up fairly regularly online. For the nozzle control, you are going to want to set that to your prop pitch control. Think about it. Prop pitch is not something that you would use in a jet of this fashion, so they've repurposed that control for the nozzles. So if you have like a, I don't know, a flap lever or, you know, some other kind of slider, you can just use that. And it works. It works just fine. So keep that in mind when you're setting up your controls for this. I would recommend that you do a separate control profile in your Microsoft Flight Simulator control profiles just for the Harrier, because it does require slight differences. All right, next view. Next view, pretty stock standard. It's your port side view. So you can see the left side of the aircraft there, and we can also do the thing with the nozzles again. So there you go. I like that little sound, by the way. That's kind of cool. I like that. And we go to the next view. Not surprisingly, we've got your starboard side view, so your right side. Pretty straightforward stuff. No surprises there. And then finally, we've got my favorite view, the BelGeode landing cam, which comes in really handy if you're trying to do any kind of VTOL work. Is it realistic? No, of course not. It's there for cinematic purposes. You know, when you want to show off the landing gear going in and so on and so forth. This is the camera view that you would hop into. You can see little outrigger wheels there. It's kind of neat. Yeah, it's kind of neat. And you can see the modeling and so on and so forth. It's pretty much standard for what we've come to expect from DC Designs. That having been said, it's not going to be Carenado quality. But then they're not known for that necessarily. I know that DC Designs has been doing a big push to upgrade and update their textures and so on for all of their aircraft. So don't be too surprised if down the road this one gets a little bit more love as well, too. All right, we're going to put it back to this view, and then we're going to hop into the cockpit. Okay, so welcome to the office. Those of you who are familiar with the Harrier will be familiar with this layout. But again, for those of you who are DCS aficionados, there's going to be some slight variations. Most notably, I'm looking at you, AOA Indexer. They don't have that in a DCS version, but that's okay. It does the job, so I'm not going to complain too much. All right, so we've got a bunch of switches and so on and so forth. We do have a checklist that we will be using to start this puppy. But yeah, you can see everything there. Pretty cool stuff. Now, there are some things that I, of course, think are not correct. For example, the throttle. I'll just give you an example here. If I move the throttle forward, you'll notice it swivels. From everything I know about the Harrier, the throttle doesn't swivel, it slides. Similar to how the Russian birds do. The Russian throttles, they slide along a linear path, and I'm pretty sure the Harrier does that too. And the other important thing is the emergency parking brakes. So you'll notice that right now the brakes are towards the throttle. Technically, that's supposed to be brakes on. So your brakes should be on in that position. And pushed away, brakes should be off. Well, it appears that's reversed in this one. So right now, the parking brakes are on. If I push it to where I know the parking brakes should be on, that actually turns the parking brakes off. And then the other minor little thing is there is no nozzle stop. If you look at the little nozzle lever here, there's no way to actually stop it at, say, 60. When you're doing a jump takeoff, typically you have your nozzle set to 40. And once you reach about 120, 125 knots thereabouts, you push it back as far as the lever will go, and the nozzle stop will prevent it from going past 60, which of course will keep your nozzles at that position and allow you to do the Harrier's trademark jump. Well, for some reason, the nozzle stop is not a part of this bird, so you'll have to manually make sure that you stop it at 60 and don't pull the nozzle all the way back. Otherwise, it's going to go to 97, which is not ideal. Not ideal on a takeoff. You definitely don't want to go in reverse. All right. Other than that, it's a Harrier. It is definitely a Harrier. There's not much more that I can really say about it. It's got the stuff in the right places. The scaling of everything looks to be on par. If I had to say, I would say it's probably a tiny bit smaller than I'm used to, but then I've actually sat in a real-life Harrier cockpit at the Naval Aviation Museum down in Pensacola. It is this cramped. It is this tiny, and of course you got the big bubble canopy here, which does help you out as far as doing VTOL stuff. So we really don't have to go to the BelGeode landing cam in order to do that. All right, but time's a wasting. Let's go ahead and start her up. We need the checklist. I'm starting to get into the habit of using the checklist because I find it tends to be a bit helpful. All right, so we're going to set this up like right there. We'll get rid of the toolbar. And we'll start with before engine just to make sure that we go through everything. So we're going to do this quickly. Canopy is open. Yeah, we confirmed that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to get in. Landing gear lever down. Yep, little tiny landing gear lever says it's down. Parking brake on. We already discussed that. Technically, it is on, even though it is in the off position. Pilot visibility on. Okay, now this is a cool little feature that they added in there. You may have noticed when we were in the outside view going around the aircraft, there was no pilot. The pilot is connected to one of these switches over here. Let me see if I can remember which one it is. I want to say it's this one. Yes, you see where it says crew visibility off? If we flip that switch to the up position, that is going to put a pilot where we are sitting. Of course, you won't see it in VR because you're literally in that spot. But if we go back to the outside view, and let's say we'll go to one of the two side views, look at that. We've actually got a pilot in the cockpit. Yay! Now, a little caveat regarding the pilot. It uses the Microsoft default Copilot, not the pilot model. So, if you want your pilot to appear to have the military flight suit and the helmet and everything, make sure you change your co-pilot model to the one that has the flight suit, the military flight suit, G-suit. That way, it'll look correct. Otherwise, you're going to run into a situation like I did when I first tried this helicopter, where it's going to have Kara sitting there with her brown leather jacket. Not quite what you want to have in a Harrier, I don't think. All right, back to the cockpit we go. Okay, so pilot visibility is on, so we can tick that item, and we are done with this page. So let's go ahead and start the Harrier. First, we want our batteries on. Battery is on. You'll notice everything comes to life. Typically in a Harrier, you would turn on your MFDs and your HUD and everything separately, but everything is conveniently linked together, so you only have one switch you need to push and everything's good to go. Now remember, with my setup, the battery and alternator come on. All right, strobe lights, we're going to get those on. Just heard it click, so we're good. Fuel valve lever is open. Okay, I got to talk about this for a second here. Now, it's been a hot minute since I've been in the DCS Harrier, which, as far as procedures go, that's the only thing that I can really compare it to. But we do have our DEX switch, and technically the DEX switch is off. Now it should be on. And we've got our fuel shut off. It says the shut off valve is engaged, which means fuel should be off. To be honest with you, I don't remember if this is reversed. I want to say it might be, because I think the fuel lever should be in the down position. I'll have to check that again, and I'll probably put up commentary, because I'm sure I'm probably wrong about this. But suffice to say, it needs to be in the up position, which is where it defaults. And down position, if you keep it there, you won't be able to start this thing at all. So we'll keep it in the up position. While I'm back here, I'm also going to get my oxygen on, because I am notorious for forgetting that. Even though it's not 100% needed in this particular flight sim, it's good to remember to do that. Generators on, APU we're going to turn on. Your APU switch is on the right side here. So we'll turn that on. I don't hear any APU winding up. I just hear, well, I don't hear anything except, of course, the avionics. But it is what it is. All right, throttle is currently closed, and we're going to hit the engine starter. Now, before we do that, typically we do close the canopy. There we go. And now we'll hit our engine start. Actually, no, we're not. Do you know why? Because of the next items here. So you'll notice we've got the boost pumps and the fuel proportioner switch, or the prop as I like to call it. Those actually need to be on prior to engine start. So proportioner on, left and right, fuel boost pumps. All of those need to be on before you actually start the bird. Will it adversely affect startup? Probably not, but that's just the way I'm used to doing it. You know how you get into certain habits, folks, and you try to stick to that because, of course, it's a perishable skill if you don't. Yeah, that's why I do that. So just a little call out there regarding that procedure. It's actually the opposite way around. You get that stuff on first, and then you hit your engine start. All right, now comes the fun part. We get to watch the gauges on the right here. It should go up to about 200 something. I want to say it's like 295. And then everything should kick in and it should start up. The other thing too, you want to make sure your nozzles are set to about 10 when you start up so you don't blast your own flaps or anything. So there we go. Nozzles are at 10. Flaps are currently in auto. We really should have them in cruise. So let me put that up there. Yeah, we don't want to blast our flaps. Blasting your flaps bad. Don't do that. All right, RPM's coming up nicely. JPT, which is the jet pipe temperature, that's coming up nicely as well. Water, it says we have none. Technically, with the water, you always start with 500 pounds. So it should say 50, and then there should be like a painted on 0 at the end to indicate the final 0 of 500. But for some strange reason, it just says 00. And to be honest with you, water is not truly modeled in this aircraft, so it's a non-issue right now. All right, but we do have a good engine start, so there we go. Temperatures are as expected. APU off after procedure. It should do that automatically. If you look at the APU switch there, it says it's off. Canopy is closed. Should have been done before we started. JPTL. That's the jet pipe temperature limiter. That should be in the on position. It's currently off. So we'll go ahead and get that on. These switches we really should not need, fuel friction control and whatnot. However, these switches we are going to need. So the Q feel, as well as the 3 SAS controls for roll, yaw, and pitch. Gotta have those on. Alright, so we'll tick these items here. Tick, tick, tick. Oxygen is already on. Like I said, I am in the habit of forgetting that, so I like to do it before I even start my engine. Alright, ready for taxi. Obtain taxi clearance. Parking brakes off. Nozzle handle as required by weight. Typically when you're taxiing, your nozzles go to 40. From everything that I've seen about the Harrier, or at least the AV-8B model, that's what I've been told. Your nozzles stay around 40. All right, maintain taxi speed 10 knots. This is fine. So we're good to go. We don't need anything else except something that, I'll be honest with you, kind of bothers me. All right, you notice our two MPCDs or MFDs, whatever you want to call them. Acronyms are crazy. This left one typically should be your HSI. So we're going to set the HSI there. The right one, you can set that to stuff like engine or the EW page, which is kind of like your RWR, your radar warning system. It's not modeled, and a lot of these pages are not modeled, by the way. But the engine page is, and that is pretty useful, so we can keep it there for now. We don't need to mess with any of the switches here. That's for stuff like the FLIR or the DMT. However, DC has repurposed these for other things, and to be honest with you, since I don't normally use them anyway, I don't even worry about it. INS, we don't have to worry about INS alignment or anything like that, so we can just leave that alone. One thing we will do, though, is we'll go ahead and get our flaps back down to auto. We're going to put them to V-stall once we get ready to take off, and that should be fine. Nose wheel steering, anti-skid, actually, hang on. It still says nose wheel steering. Interesting. I think this was done as a convenience thing. What do I mean by that? The way the Harrier typically works, it's free-castering nose wheel. And the only way to actually engage the nose wheel steering is from a little button that would be on your stick, I want to say. Which, actually, I have mine bound to my button on my throttle. It's not needed here in Microsoft Flight Simulator because the nose wheel steering by default is on. But typically, you wouldn't have the nose wheel steering default. It would just be free-castering, and then, of course, you would activate it as needed. But again, for convenience, for creature comforts, whatever, I am totally okay with that because nothing's worse than forgetting to hit your nose wheel steering switch and then deciding you want to turn right. Doesn't quite work as well as you might think. Alright, but since we're ready to go, we're going to find us some boats to land on here, and let's see if we can call for taxi clearance. Want ground, and we need to taxi departing straight out.
Ground VMA 21402 request taxi for takeoff departing straight out. VMA 21402 taxi to and hold short of runway 22 via taxiway Alpha. Contact tower on 120.7 when ready.
Alright, sounds good to me.
Taxi to and hold short runway 22 via taxiway Alpha VMA 21402.
Okay, so with that done, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my nozzles to 40. If you look at the bottom right of the HUD, you'll see the numbers increasing. So there we go. Nozzle set to 40. Flaps are in auto mode, so they're going to stay around 24, 25-ish. They will adjust themselves as I change the nozzles. Typically, we're going to want to have it in V-stall if we're doing a short takeoff, and then we'll put it back into auto afterwards, and then eventually we'll put it into cruise. But for right now, we'll leave everything as auto, and we should be good to go. Alright, let's get the parking brakes off. We're going to go to the outside view as we taxi to runway 22, which is clean across the opposite side. And why is there a forklift on my runway? Ugh. Marines. Alright, parking brakes off. Let's get a little bit of throttle. I say a little bit of throttle, but you actually have to put a fair amount of throttle in this thing. Alright, now the other thing is you want to make sure that your HUD mode is correct. There are slight variances in the types of HUD modes that you are in. So typically if you're doing a short takeoff, you want to have your HUD mode in V-stall. And you'll notice the little sound that it makes when it changes over. When you have taken off, you will put it into nav. Nav will change some of the HUD symbology for forward flight. One of the most important pieces of information that you're going to see is what's called the witch's hat in VTOL. That is the little funky looking two straight lines with the upward chevron. The witch's hat is what you're going to use to help get yourself trimmed out, as it were, whenever you're trying to do any kind of VTOL maneuvers or on approach and so on. So that's why we would keep it in the V-stall mode. When you put it into nav, witch's hat goes away, you don't have to worry about it, and it looks just like any other HUD out there. Alright, so 10 knots is pretty much what we're supposed to be taxiing at, so we're a little bit faster than that, but considering there's no traffic, I'm okay with this. Very much okay with this. I do notice every now and then I get a tiny little bit of stutters. Not quite sure what's causing that, because everything is currently in offline mode right now, but it's Hawaii, so I'm sure it's got some surprises for me. In the interim, since we still have a little ways to go, let's go back to the outside view really quick. Now, one little bit of weirdness that you may have noticed in the outside view that I have also noticed is the fact that the flaps seem to be extra sensitive in auto. I don't believe we're supposed to jiggle that much when we're in auto, especially if you're on the ground. Usually it just sticks itself at 25 and, you know, that's it. So I'm not sure what the problem is with that, but I'm sure it's something that'll be addressed as time goes on. Remember, this is still a relatively new product here. Now, you may notice that we are not going all the way to the end, because let's face it, we're in a Harrier, we can jump. I'm just going to pull myself up right about here. Sounds, by the way, are absolutely divine. Kudos to Dean and DC Designs on the audio. It is tremendously good. Alright, let's contact the tower. Okay, takeoff clearance, please.
Tower VMA 21402 ready at runway 22 departing straight out. VMA 21402 altimeter 29.902 wind 261 at 4. Straight out departure approved. Cleared for takeoff runway 22.
Sounds good to me.
Cleared for takeoff runway 22 VMA 21402.
Now, I did change my registration number and call sign. However, it's not picking up, so I'm not sure what the issue is on that. Technically, we should be Black Sheep 70, but that doesn't seem to have worked. All right, other things we need to do. Let's go ahead and get our flaps to the V-stall mode. And we're going to push forward here. We'll take the active, make sure there's no one coming in. No, looks clean. No one going out. Yeah, also looks clean. Okay. So for our first stop, I believe there is going to be a moving LHA or LSD carrier group just to the south of Oahu. We're going to see if we can locate them. And once again, I'm getting a little bit of stutters. That may be a thing, so if so, I apologize from now. Hopefully it'll keep it to a minimum here. Alright, right about there is where I'm looking for. So we're going to go brakes down. Throttles up. Brakes off. She seems to want to fly a lot sooner than she really should. Given our weight right now, it should be about 120, 125 knots before we're taking off. As you can see, I haven't even jumped yet, and we're already up. So nozzles are about 60. We're going to go to the BelGeode landing cam really quick and get the gear up. Okay, so we are up and at 'em, and the nozzles are down to 0. The flaps are in auto. We can put the flaps into cruise if we would like, so I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick. There we go. And that should stop it from jiggling around. As far as our HUD mode, we're going to switch from V-stall to nav. Come on. There we go. And you'll notice how much cleaner the HUD looks because it is in nav mode. So all of that so far looks pretty good. And let's see if we can find our static ship. That's what we're going to be landing on for the end of this video, but I want to find the dynamic ship that we're going to be landing on beforehand. You can see our speed looks pretty good. We're just over about 300 knots, and we're right about at 2,000 feet. Okay, thank you.
Tower VMA21402 frequency change.
There's what looks to be an oil tanker over there. And this should be our LHA, so we're just going to buzz it really quick here. We're not going to get into the pattern and try to land. Just want to make sure this is in fact the ship we're looking for. I'm going to pull the power back just a touch here. I'm not 100% certain as to whether or not these RPMs are accurate to the book, but it does feel kind of right. Kind of, I say. Because I notice we do also tend to bleed off airspeed fairly rapidly. That does not feel right. But yes, as you can see, there is most certainly an LHA-6 down there. Looks to be a Tarawa class, if I had to guess. There's a bunch of Ospreys and so on it. And what looks to be F-35s. I'm okay with that. Alright, let's get our power back up here. So, with my changing the throttles here to what I think the RPMs should be, we're dropping way too much in speed. Way too much. That I'm not a fan of. That I'm not a fan of. At all. Alright, well, we're going to head to the southern side of Oahu just to pre-warn you. Once we get over this mountain here and start closing in on Honolulu, we may experience some stutters. And that's going to be all the buildings and whatnot loading in. Well, we're going to go to the outside view here as we make our way back towards the island. And we're going to do a little bit of shenanigans to see if we can get through this mountain pass here that will lead us to the southern side of the island. I'm just going to keep my throttle at the firewall, which basically keeps me just behind the afterburner gate. Since there's no afterburner in this, that will keep our RPMs right around 949 indicated, and our speed just over 300 knots. Okay, yeah, we're definitely in stutter country now. Holy crap. Alright, but as you can see, here is Pearl Harbor, and of course we've got all the wonderful ships from the Vessels pack, the Vessels Hawaii pack. And of course there is the Arizona Memorial, so press F to pay your respects at the Arizona Memorial as we pass by Ford Island. Okay, so we're going to head out of Pearl Harbor. We'll go past Honolulu International and we'll see if we can find our carrier group. There is a frigate, looks like an Oliver Hazard Perry class, and there is also what appears to be, I want to say that's an Arleigh Burke.
Altitude.
Yeah, it looks like an Arleigh Burke destroyer. Alright, I'm going to go to the outside view really quick. Maybe that will help slow down the stutters here. But we are looking for a group of ships sailing together. One of them should be our LSD, or landing ship dock. And I want to say that is it off in that direction. So we're going to swing out to the right a little bit and see if we can find them. And we'll get up to the pattern altitude here. So right about 800 feet. There we go. Alright, let's go back to the outside view. Okay, so one thing I will note here as far as the carrier group goes, it does seem to me like they are awfully close together. I'm not sure why that is. Alright, we'll make sure that we're in the proper flaps mode here. Yep, we are in auto currently. And there's our boat. So let's kind of buzz them here before we start coming down. And you'll see what I mean about us bleeding off speed rather quickly. That doesn't feel right. It does not feel right. But yeah, that's what we're going to attempt to land on. Typically, I doubt the Harrier would land on that kind of ship. The Tarawa class, sure. But that one doesn't appear to be very well set up for us. But with that having been said, we're still going to attempt it. Why? Because it's me, and I'm crazy like that. Alright, we want to be below 50 before we get the gear out, so that's pretty good so far. We'll give it a little bit of left rudder here, because I notice I'm kind of creeping up in altitude. Didn't catch our BRC, or base recovery course, but we can eyeball it to see where we are. Okay, we should be on downwind now, so let's see. That's about 200. Nope, 290. Yeah, we'll make it 280. Alright, let's go ahead and get ourselves configured. So, we want HUD mode back to V-stall. Okay. And the flaps are currently in auto. We'll go ahead and get the gear down. That should also drag the flaps down a little bit here. We'll get our nozzles currently at 20 or 21. And we're going to brake. You see we ballooned up considerably here, so I'm going to set our nozzles to 40. Right now 41. Should be good. We're giving it a lot of left pedal here just to make sure we're not creeping up. We probably should also trim ourselves into a landing configuration, so we want to make sure that we've got the flight path marker in the E bracket there. I'll come off the rudder here because we're still really high up. There we go. Okay, so I'm basically hands-free on the stick here, and we're just trying to get ourselves up to where we need to be. Alright, so we always want to come into a ship that's moving because the way that the nozzle regime works, we're going to want to set it to about 82-ish. However, this particular ship is moving awfully slow. So even if we set it up to 82, we're still going to be going faster than the ship itself, which is not ideal. I'm going to get our flaps to V-stall. There we go. You can see we're dropping like a rock. Now, we really should be about 120 feet off the deck. So we're at 600 right now, and we're just kind of creeping up. I'm going to put our nozzles to 82. Bearing in mind, I may need to actually fly us backwards in order to get us in position, because we are going way faster than this ship. That is one thing for the developer of this particular add-on, the Vessels add-on. Your moving ships here, aside from being too close together, they are also traveling way too slow. They should be closer to about 19 or so knots. As you can see, I'm at 10, and I'm just now matching their speed. So I'm actually going to pull the nozzles forward here. Make no bones about it, folks. This is definitely a fine art trying to get this puppy lined up. The witch's hat should be right on top of our flight path marker, and that will indicate that we're in the proper trim. And also the E-bracket should be in the center. Not everything is lining up the way I would like to have it, however, so We could just blame that on my technique. But yeah, suffice to say, it's going to get interesting trying to put this sucker down. Let's go to the BelGeode cam really quick as we inch our way forward, so that way we can take a nice cinematic view of the ship. Okay, now comes the fun part. You can see my nozzles are currently at 81, flaps are at V-stall. How are we doing on gas? 3,400, so we should be good for this. We won't need any water and landing water. But I am going to start giving us a bit more throttle, and I'm going to basically put our nozzles almost vertical here. Try to stabilize ourselves against the side here. And we'll start pushing ourselves to the right. We're a little higher than I would like us to be. But once we're sliding to the right here, I'll drop us in. Now the real question is going to be, what are the contact points on this bird and this ship? Is it going to allow us to land and stay put? Or are we going to be in a situation where we're wiggling all over the deck? Stay tuned, because we're about to find out. Alright, as they say, we're going to drop it like it's hot. Okay, we are down, and as you can see, we are sliding to the back. That is not good. That is not good at all. We're pushing nozzles forward here. Ooh, okay. Lessons were learned. Alright, so there is still some work to be done, and I'm not sure if it is on the point of the developer for the ship, or if it's going to be on DC. But as you can see, it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all. So we're going to quickly set up for takeoff. Nozzles are at 40. And we're going to try and make our way down the runway. And jump. 75 knots takeoff speed. That seems a little low. Especially for a ship that's barely moving. But you know what? Not going to worry about it. Gear coming up. Flaps to auto. Nozzles coming up. And let's do some shenanigans as we make our way back to that static ship that we saw earlier. And that should make for a more interesting landing. feeling good about this, but we are starting to run a little bit low on gas. You can see we're down to 2,800. Now, while that might be a good thing for us when we're trying to go vertical, because the lighter you are, the easier it is for you to hover and do a vertical landing, we do also run into the issue of we really don't have that much time to get to the boat. So we can see Honolulu down there, and we need to find Kaneohe Bay. Once we do, we will also need to find where our little ship is. So I'm going to swing out a little bit to the left here. Kind of have an idea ballpark where it is, but obviously we're going to need to adjust as we get eyes on. So far, if you're wondering what my opinion of this bird is, it's pretty decent. It's pretty decent. I mean, like I said in the beginning of the video, we can't expect DCS level AV-8B Harrier here. But does it do what a Harrier is supposed to do? Yes, absolutely. So to me, that makes it fun to fly. In fact, really the only complaint that I would have about this is, at least as far as the flight model goes, is while we're in forward flight, if I were to pull the throttle all the way down and then start a descent, a pretty healthy descent, because you'll notice we're at 8,700, we're still losing a lot of airspeed. At the angle that we're at right now, we actually should be maintaining, if not gaining, a little bit of airspeed in this kind of a dive. But if you look at the HUD in the upper left corner, you'll see we're still dropping. That's not right. That's not right at all. I mean, if you know anything about how the aerodynamics of aircraft work, fighters and whatnot, we really should be picking up airspeed. I shouldn't have to pull my throttle all the way back up for us to be gaining airspeed in a dive. So that might be an area of opportunity for DC to look at as far as coding goes for the flight model. That's really the only thing that I've found about this that's questionable, shall we say. Alright, but we need to find our little boat, and that way we can put this puppy on it and we can call this video done. We're at 3,000 right now. We do have the Marine Corps Air Station directly in front of us, so we'll quickly go to the BelGeode landing cam and we'll see if we can find our boat. Alright, I want to say this is our LHA here, so we're going to see if we can get into the pattern here. You'll notice I still have it set to V-stall on the HUD. Honestly, I think the V-stall comes in more handy than the nav, but typically for that little sprint, we probably would have had it set to nav. Alright, flaps in auto, yes. And look at that, you see we're just below 200. We don't even have the speed brakes out. We really should not be decelerating this much. But there's our ship. We're going to try and do a full pattern here. Alright, so we're downwind. We're going to go down a little bit further, then we'll turn around, get her down to about 800 feet. We'll pass by the starboard side of the ship. Alright, we're at the 90. That's 90 degrees perpendicular to the course of the ship. Okay, now we're starting to drop a little too much. I want to be at 800, not 700. Okay, what is our current bearing? About 175-ish. That looks to be about right for BRC, 175. Now that's a beautiful ship right there. I love that. Okay, so we're at 268, so we're still out of gear range. I'm not 100% convinced that the trim works on this. Really not. Alright, but we're going to swing ourselves around here. Give her a little bit of left rudder because that nose wants to pop up. Alright, so what did I say we were at? 275, thereabouts? That's a tanker. That's not what we're looking for. There's our ship. Alright, so right about there should be good. Okay, so let's get gear down. Let's get nozzle to 20. In fact, let's go nozzles 40. Now, as we're in the turn, we're going to want to add a fair amount of rudder because remember we've got those little jets, as it were, at the end of the wings that will actually help us yaw around. I'm going to set flaps to V-stall. There we go. Yeah, you can see we ballooned up a lot. Again, I'm not 100% certain if the RPMs and the speed are accurate. To me, it kind of doesn't feel like it, because we really should not have ballooned up that much. And I'm actually trying to trim us right now, and it's just not working. We're just sinking like a stone. So yeah, not 100% convinced on that. DC, you may want to take a look at that. Alright, once again, we are way high, so we need to get ourselves down to about 120. Now, things are going to be different this time around because of the fact that this ship is not moving. So I'm going to set our nozzles to 60 from now. And just bear in mind that I'm going to need to practically keep us at vertical for the nozzles before this thing will actually stop in time. In fact, we might have to put the nozzles in reverse. But we're going to bring her down nice and easy. I'm going to put the nozzles to 82. There we go, we're at 82. Coming down easy. We're at a slight angle. We do have a little bit of a crosswind here. We can compensate for that by slipping to the right a little. So I'm putting in some left rudder and a little bit of right aileron. Not too much because we don't want to tip over. We do want to keep moving forward though. That would be nice. Quick look through the BelGeode landing cam. Okay, now we're starting to drift a little to the right, so I'm going to give us some left aileron here. We're almost in position. We're going to aim for just beyond that port side elevator here. And let's go ahead and get our nozzles back up. Definitely watch your throttle. Remember, it takes a little while for this thing to actually put the power back in. If you need to, now would be the time that you would give it some water. So we can simulate that by putting the H2O switch to the down position. And we should start counting down from 500 pounds. It actually says 95. That's definitely not correct. And we're going to bring her in. So just enough throttle to keep us basically in a hover as I slide to the right. Right about there is good. We want to get right on that tram line, the big yellow line there. And I realize I'm a little further back than I would like. So I'm actually going to nose this down slightly. And we're going to set her down right here. So there you go, folks. Look at that. That is so awesome. So we've got some F-35s, I'm assuming Bravo models. Basically the replacement for the Harrier. And of course, we've got us in our little dinky Harrier, which is awesome. I love the Harrier. I love the Harrier. All right, I'm going to get the parking brakes off. We're going to push forward and find a nice little parking spot, and then we will call this episode done. And while I'm taxiing, I will remind you the aircraft that we have been showing off here has been DC Designs, AV-8B and GR9 Harriers. You get all of them in the pack. Everything, of course, will be linked in the video description below. Just to remind you, it is not DCS quality, but for what it is actually pretty fun to fly around in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And the ship that we've landed on, as well as the other ship that we attempted to land on earlier, are all part of the Vessels pack. There's the Vessels core, which you will need, and then of course there is the Hawaii. Now how am I going to get into this parking spot? That's going to get interesting. That is going to get really interesting. Links to everything in the video description below. I'm going to go to the outside view here as I try to back this puppy up. Alright, so there you have it, folks. I think I am just behind the foul line, so we should be good to go. And that is where we're going to end it for today. So thank you, as always, for watching. This has been BelGeode. I've been flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator. The aircraft we've been showing off has been the DC Designs AV-8B Harrier. And the ships that we've been landing on are from the Vessels package, both the Core and the Hawaii. Everything's linked in the video description below. If you enjoy what you've seen, please feel free to give me a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And we'll be back sometime in the near future with some more Microsoft Flight Simulator goodness. Alrighty, folks, that's it for me. BelGeode signing out. Ciao!